Welcome to ANN Weekly, a service of the Seventh-day Adventist World Church. Thanks again for joining us. Coming up, Adventist World Radio celebrates 40 years of ministry.
And we find out what top church leadership decided during this week's business meetings.
Later, we'll learn how Adventists are reaching Navajo people in the U.S. state of Arizona. But first, this week's Adventist news.
Christian leaders from China paid a courtesy visit to Adventist Church headquarters recently. Zhubin Shen, who oversees the Protestant church in Shanghai, visited with about a dozen Adventist leaders over lunch. Christians are still a minority in China, but there are now 23 million Protestants in the country, Shen told Adventist World Church President Ted Wilson. President Wilson says he'll return the visit next year. During a previous visit to church headquarters, Shen applauded the Adventist emphasis on healthy living. He said he'd even try a vegetarian diet.
The Adventist Development and Relief Agency is offering shelter and medical assistance to flood victims in Pakistan and the Philippines. Torrential rains in Pakistan recently triggered massive flooding and displaced thousands of people. In the Philippines, back-to-back hurricanes left similar devastation. In Pakistan, an Adra mobile medical clinic treated more than 400 patients the day it opened. Meanwhile, Adra distributed clean drinking water for nearly 4,000 families in the provinces surrounding Manila. The region is at risk because contaminated standing water can quickly spread diseases such as cholera and malaria.
Adventist World Radio celebrates 40 years of radio ministry this year. AWR broadcasts the Adventist hope in more than 80 languages worldwide, reaching areas where most missionaries can't go. Later on in this program, we'll report from AWR's anniversary celebration.
Church leadership pledged this week to share the Adventist hope with their friends and neighbors. They'll enlist members back home to help distribute copies of church co-founder Ellen White's book, The Great Controversy, by the millions. For community members unfamiliar with White's work, that title can sound like a science fiction novel. So a new sharing version of the classic Adventist book is called The Great Hope. It features updated language and a new cover. Church leaders say the book helps readers understand today's unsettled world from a biblical perspective.
Well, the Great Controversy Project is one of the most exciting projects I've seen. And I think it's exciting because it's a huge, bold, anointed goal that's challenging the entire membership to do something extraordinary for God. And that's basically asking members to take the Great Controversy, we're calling it the Great Hope, and to give it to their friends, neighbors, strangers, whoever. Give this book to them with the idea that it'll have two impacts. Ellen White says, first of all, that she says this book, The Great Controversy, more than any other book, she wanted to see it widely circulated. But she says when a person gets it, there'll be one of two reactions. Some will read the book and they will be so impressed immediately, they'll be drawn to Christ and His Word, and they will embrace this wonderful truth. She said others will be more timid or more hesitant or more careful, cautious, and they will wait until they see the events predicted and talked about in the book take place before they take a position on it. I think the Great Controversy Project is a special project that God has anointed and He will do great things through.
More than 300 Adventist leaders met at World Church headquarters this week for annual council. The annual business meeting shapes church policy and interprets how leaders apply it worldwide. We now have a few of their key decisions to share with you.
Big changes are in store for Adventists in the Middle East. The region now falls directly under the oversight of World Church headquarters. Previously, 2 church regions oversaw Adventist work in the Middle East. Church leaders say the shift will help move resources and personnel to a region where outreach remains difficult.
Now, what exactly does the Bible say about ordination? Well, the church's top theologians are taking a closer look. Annual council delegates heard plans this week to review the theology behind ordination. Church leaders worldwide will study what the Bible says about ordination and how it could affect church practices. The study responds to Adventists who would like to see more women in top leadership positions. Ordination is a requirement for many of these jobs.
A church of islands and villages. That's what World Church Secretary G.T. Ng called the Adventist Church this week. His point? Adventists tend to avoid big city outreach, in part because evangelism in rural areas is often easier and more successful. This week, church leaders pledged to prioritize urban ministry in the coming years. They'll begin in New York City and eventually reach 650 of the world's biggest cities. Leaders acknowledge that evangelism is not one size fits all. They asked local leadership to help tailor outreach efforts to match each region's culture and perspective. Ministry to New York City is a longtime passion of World Church President Ted Wilson. He wrote his doctoral dissertation on the subject and previously worked in the region.
One of the biggest challenges that God has placed before the Seventh-day Adventist Church is to carry the three angels' messages with power to the 50% and over of the world's population that now lives in the big metropolitan areas, the cities of the world. This has been a passion for me for a long time, and the Lord laid it on my heart when I was invited to serve in the Greater New York Conference and spent about 7 years there pastoring and then also working especially in special evangelism for the metropolitan New York area. To me, this is one of God's great calls to us, and in the spirit of prophecy, we're given ample instruction as to how to work the cities in a very dynamic way, using city centers and centers of influence, church members and young people and people corresponding and dialoguing with so many individuals in the city, and then also something outside the city where people can draw in the beauties of God's second nature, His second book, nature, and then to be able to, in some way, learn techniques of going back into the city. So there's this in and out concept. And really, as we focus upon New York City in 2013 as the initial site for this comprehensive urban evangelism program, using every method possible on a sustained basis beyond a public evangelistic setting, as we focus on New York, we're hoping that that will be the catalyst that will help many other places around the world, division-designated cities and then union-designated cities, local field-designated cities, so that by the year 2015, at General Conference session, by God's grace and the power of the Holy Spirit, we will have been able to provide a strong emphasis to approximately 650 of the largest urban areas of the world. And then, by God's grace and through His power, we hope to see what the Spirit of prophecy has indicated, that when the cities are worked as God would have them, the result will be the setting and operation of a mighty movement such as we have not yet witnessed. By God's grace, that mighty movement will begin, and Jesus can soon come.
Welcome back. Adventist Review editor Bill Knott is here to talk about the latest issue of the church's flagship magazine.
I'd be tempted to say this is a typical week in the Adventist Review magazine, except I don't really think there are any typical weeks in the Adventist Review. This week's cover story is called Sweeney's Garden, and it's about an unusual experiment by a young Adventist couple in downtown Atlanta who uses their backyard garden behind their apartment complex as a ministry tool to reach their neighbors with both food and conversation. You'll also find in this edition interesting features, devotionals. I'd point your attention to one that I guess I have a special interest in. It's called Truth in Advertising, and it's about the way Seventh-day Adventists relate to the issue of alcohol in our society. For many years, this church has cared very deeply about the impact of socially destructive behaviors, and yet this is a topic we've gone quiet on. Read my editorial. You'll discover we're not going to be quiet anymore. Throughout this edition, you're going to find articles that deepen your faith, strengthen your relationship with Jesus, lead you back to Bible study, and give you what you turn to the Adventist Review every week to find: compelling news and information about the world church. Throughout this edition, you're going to find things that make you glad you're a Seventh-day Adventist. That's why you subscribe to Adventist Review, and we hope you continue to do so.
To read more, check your mailbox for this week's issue of the Adventist Review, or find the same stories online at adventistreview.org.
Your mission offerings can help Adventists in the U.S. state of Arizona reach the area's Navajo population. We asked Andrew King to tell us how.
I recently got back from a trip to the southwest of the United States, to a city of Page in Arizona. And right outside of Page, the paved roads end and dirt roads begin, and you're on the Navajo reservation. I met a family, Alan and Kelly Fowler, who've recently moved there. Now, Alan grew up in this area because he's actually a Navajo by birth. And they went there with the intention of starting a Seventh-day Adventist church, because there's no Seventh-day Adventist church for 2 hours in every direction you could drive. And so they got there and they started going door to door and trying to meet with people and gain the trust and introduce themselves. And what they found is they really needed to start a community center, something that could give people a reason to come and visit them. So they've started building this community center, and they offer healthy eating classes. They're building a well so that residents of the area can come there and easily get access to water. So your offerings this quarter will go to help them expand their ministry there in Page, Arizona.
For this week's Adventist social media highlights, we turn to Megan Bronner.
This week, during the World Church's Fall Business Session, President Wilson announced an emphasis on reaching out to large urban populations. Tell us your best ideas for doing that with the hashtag #HowToReachBigCities. Last week, our hashtag was WhyIamAdventist. Here are some of your responses. Pastor Miranda Jr. said there is no other church closer to what the Bible teaches. Harvey Alvarez said, because our church proclaims the three angels' message, gives me hope and helps me live a better life. Doris RVB said, because it's a Bible-based religion. And from a Sabbath blog, because all the Adventist beliefs are from the Bible, and because we focus on having that special relationship with Jesus. Thanks to everyone who participated, and make sure you're following Adventist Church and Adventist News on Twitter.
The Adventist Church recently lost a veteran religious liberty leader. With a tribute to Karl Novak, here's John Gratz.
Karl Novak went to Australia because we had the 13th meeting of experts of the ILA, the International Religious Liberty Association. And he was traveling to Australia for attending this meeting at the University of Sydney, and he took a few days of vacation. And during these few days, unfortunately, while he was swimming, he died there in Cairns, the northern part of Australia. And Karl Novak was a very good friend, a friend of mine for 20 years. He was a young president when the communist regime collapsed, and he was the president of the Union of Czechoslovakia, a church leader there. He did a very good job there. And since 2005, he was in charge of religious freedom for Europe. He was someone with whom it was easy to work, you know, a wise man, someone who had the capacity to analyze issues and to give very good advice most of the time. And it was very good to have him with us. And I have to say that it's really a tragedy for his family. He has a wife, Dana, and three daughters waiting. They were waiting for him, and unfortunately, he did not come back home. And except that I brought ashes to his family. And we will miss him, really. We will miss him for the religious freedom, and we will miss him as a friend.
Earlier in life, Karl served as an Adventist pastor and publishing director. Later, he represented the church at the United Nations in Geneva and the European Parliament in Brussels. Karl once told ANN he was convinced that all faith communities share the same rights and responsibilities.
After the break, our tech tip of the week. Welcome back. Now, maybe you remember Fernita using felts and crayons when you were a kid to tell Bible stories.
I do. I remember every Sabbath morning that I wanted to be the first one the teacher called on to put my little felt piece on the storyboard.
Well, believe it or not, technology has advanced so far that now Falvo Fowler tells us about a new app that gives today's kids electronic versions of these favorite childhood pastimes.
The General Conference Sabbath School and Personal Ministries Department does a lot of really great things for kids beyond the printed Bible story guides that they get every week. They're also now doing an animated video production that you can download. But we're here today to talk with Falvo Fowler about a brand new iPad application for kids. Falvo, how did you get the idea for the iPad app?
I was sitting in church, and right across the aisle was a father who was reading, I guess he was reading the news, and the mother was busy trying to keep the kids occupied with a felt board, you know, the felts that you move across on a blue background. And I thought, wow, that's a great thing. Let's see if we can create something to mess that guy up. And then I looked next to me and saw my wife and my daughter were doing the same thing, and I was that guy. I wasn't reading the news. But that's how the idea came along. And so we created an app that the characters that you see here, you can create a background, you can draw on it, and you can move characters across. So it takes the felt and a digital version.
Nice. What else can you do with the app?
Well, you can create graphics that you can email. You can draw your own backgrounds or characters. You can read your Sabbath school lesson for children from beginner all the way up to juniors, and basically have fun with it. We haven't added video and audio because we know how spouses and kids can make that come alive during service.
Now, if somebody has an iPad and they want to get the app, how much does it cost and where can they go to get it?
It's free. There's a link on gracelink.net, or you can go to the iTunes store and do a search for Gracelink. You'll see the animation, the podcast, as well as the app.
Okay.
And for right now, it's only for the iPad, but it's coming out in Android soon.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Again, go to gracelink.net to find out more about the app.
Willie Oliver recently met with family ministries leaders from around the world. We asked him to tell us where the department is headed.
One of the most interesting issues in my work, especially after the first year or during the first year of the General Conference, after the General Conference session, is meeting with leaders around the world and the leadership of different world divisions. It's a time to get to know the leadership. It's a time to present leadership vision. It's a time to fellowship, do workshops, get to know the area and what some of the challenges are of our work in family ministries in that particular area of the world. To be sure, casting a vision is a wonderful opportunity at each advisory that we have in family ministries. And this time was very dynamic because most of the directors around the world are brand new. And so we get to talk and share, and we're looking forward to a wonderful 5-year period as we develop these initiatives and impact families, because when we have stronger and healthier families, we have stronger and healthier communities, we have stronger and healthier churches, so that we can accomplish the mission of the church. That I'm excited about, and I'm delighted because of the group of strong and capable leaders that we have in the Seventh-day Adventist Church around the world.
Adventist Youth Ministries leaders worldwide also met recently. Jobert Kanji shares how the department is sharpening its mission.
Welcome to the world of youth ministry, where our mission is to lead young people into a saving relationship with Jesus Christ and help them embrace His call to discipleship. It's a time of new beginning for us, and our theme for the next 5 years is the power of one, when we're calling all entities, all organizations that work for young people, inspired by the call of Jesus, to be united for one purpose. We bring you a new document that we have called Revisioning Youth Ministry. This is the product of the thinking of the 13 division youth directors around the world. It's an exciting document that gives us vision and purpose for the next 5 years. Youth ministry is an activity-filled department, and it is important for us to step back and ask ourselves, why do we do what we do? This revisioning youth ministry model gives us a sense of direction and purpose based on John 20:21, where we have the mission of Jesus, which is the preaching of the gospel, the method of Jesus, which is the empowering of the Holy Spirit, which gives us the context of our work, which is revival and reformation. And in Luke 6:12-17, we have the three arms of our youth ministry. Discipleship, Jesus on the mountain in prayer. He comes down and brings the 12 around him, community, and together they go into mission. Discipleship, community, and mission are the three purposes of youth ministry.
When we come back, learn how Children's Ministries is helping kids keep God first. We'll be right back.
Kids today are bombarded by distractions. Linda Coe tells us how Children's Ministries is encouraging quiet time with God.
One of our goals for our children throughout the whole world church this next 5 years will be to help them develop a personal time with God. We call that TAG, T-A-G, time alone with God. And we want to help our children, besides just spending a lot of time on television or the internet or games on computers, we want to encourage them to spend time in prayer, in Bible study. So as a result, we have developed from our department a prayer calendar, which will be published by this December to help distribute throughout the whole world. And also we have also printed some of the Bible study guide that help our children study the Bible every day from January all the way to December. And at the same time, for our teenagers, we have also developed a prayer journal, which we want to encourage them to be able to take time to think and reflect on the things they've read in the Bible and write what they think and help them live how the application of life as it is found in the Bible. So we hope that through this we can encourage our children and our young people throughout the world church to spend time alone with God, because TAG is an important part of something that they want to develop, and we want to foster that.
Adventist World Radio hosted its 40th anniversary reception at World Church headquarters on October 11. Many of the church leaders, in town for annual council, attended the celebration over lunch. They heard presentations and enjoyed musical numbers by AWR's Artist Associates, the Emmanuel Quartet. Speakers included past AWR presidents Gordon Retzer, Don Jacobson, and Ben Schoen, as well as AWR pioneers Alan and Andrea Steele. Staff members at World Church headquarters also joined in celebrating decades of broadcast to unreached people groups in their own languages.
In 1971, the Seventh-day Adventist Church decided to go worldwide with shortwave radio broadcasts, primarily to reach Russia and other countries in Eastern Europe from a station in Portugal. Since then, we have grown to where we have our own broadcast stations on Guam in the Pacific Ocean, from where we air over 35 languages every day. We also produce programs in about 80+ languages for shortwave. This is probably the most languages that any other station in the world produces and airs. The Seventh-day Adventist Church is committed to send a message to countries like China, India, and other parts of the world on shortwave, because that's the only way we can reach them. This year we have our 40th anniversary of Adventist World Radio.
Finally this week, let's hear from church historian David Trim.
Welcome to This Week in Adventist History. On October 10, 2003, the Hope Channel launched. After fairly modest beginnings, today it's broadcast on every inhabited continent of the world and in nearly 24 languages. On October 12, in 1945, Desmond Doss was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. He was the first conscientious objector to receive this, the highest medal for bravery in the United States military. Doss had served as an Army combat medic in Guam and later in the Philippines, where he received a Bronze Star. On May 5, 1945, on Okinawa, Doss stayed with wounded men stranded atop near a ridge under intense enemy fire. Despite being wounded, he stayed with those men and was later credited by the government with saving nearly 100 lives. On October 14, in 1840, the first Millerite General Conference opened in Boston, Massachusetts. It had been decided that the Millerite movement, which was growing and taking off, needed organization, and this first conference took place in Boston at the Chardon Street Chapel, pastored by Joshua V. Himes. Almost 200 clergy and laity, representing a wide number of churches, were present. And on October 15, 1984, the Adventist University of Central Africa opened in Kigali, Rwanda. It had been founded in 1978, but it didn't officially begin classes until this date. Closed during the genocide in 2006, they started a new campus at Mosoro, and today it's thriving.
Thanks for joining us here at ANN Weekly. Join us again next week for more news from the world headquarters of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Until then, visit news.adventist.org for daily news and videos. God bless.